All right, hello and welcome. We're going to kick things off today with a huge question. A question that every single new nation has to grapple with.
So, you've just won your independence. Now what? How do you build an entire economic future from scratch? The answer, can literally set the course for generations to come.
Well, back in the 1950s, India looked to one man for that answer, Professor P.C. Mahalanobanis. And boy, did he have a plan. It was a vision that would go on to shape India's economy for decades.
So Mahalanobanis had this massive dilemma on his hands. Do you focus on making stuff people need right now, food, clothes, or do you build the big machines and factories first, the ones that will let you make way more stuff down the road? It's that classic choice, right? The present versus the future.
And to tackle this, he came up with what's called the two-sector model. It's pretty straightforward, really. He split the economy into just two buckets. First, you've got consumer goods. That's all the stuff we use every day. And second, you've got capital goods. Think of these as the things that make the things. The machines, the factories, all that heavy-duty industry.
Okay, so for this model to even work on paper, they had to make a few, let's call them simplifying assumptions. Like, they imagined a closed economy, meaning no foreign trade at all. And they assumed every single factory was running at 100% capacity. Now, this made the math easier, for sure, but as you can imagine, these assumptions ended up being a huge point of criticism later on.
And this all leads to the big central question. How do you split the country's investment pie? What slice, we'll call it lambda C, goes into making consumer goods? And what slice, lambda K, goes into building the machines that make those goods? This one decision was going to set India's entire economic direction.
Whoa, okay, don't let the math on screen scare you. The idea behind this equation is actually super simple. All it's saying is this: if you pour more money into capital goods, that's the lambda K part, yeah, you might have less stuff to buy in the short term. But, and this is the key, over the long haul, that investment will make the whole country's income and production power explode. It's the classic short-term pain for long-term gain strategy.
So that's the theory. But how did it actually play out in the real world? Well, the simple two-sector idea got beefed up into a full-blown, practical four-sector plan for what was India's super important second five-year plan.
And the budget for this thing? A whopping 5,600 crore rupees. For the time, that was an absolutely massive amount of money. The whole point was to build the foundation of India's industrial future from the ground up.
So, what were they trying to achieve with all that cash? Two main things, really. Goal number one, boost the national income by 5% every single year. And goal number two, create 11 million new jobs for people. And this table here breaks down exactly where all that money went. Check this out. The K sector, that's heavy industry, got the biggest chunk of the investment, almost a third of the entire budget. But look at the jobs it created, less than 1 million. Now compare that to the C2 sector, household industries, agriculture. It got less money, but created a staggering 4.7 million jobs. This right here, this is the perfect picture of that trade-off we were talking about. Long-term growth versus jobs right now.
So, was this plan the perfect blueprint? Well, not quite. You know how it is, with any big, bold idea. It wasn't long before people started pointing out some pretty major flaws.
The critics had a field day. For one, the model just pretended foreign trade didn't exist, which, come on, that's just not realistic. It also kind of assumed you'd have an infinite supply of farm produce and skilled workers, which were actually in really short supply. And maybe the biggest sticking point was that decision to dump a third of all the money into heavy industry. It just seemed kind of pulled out of thin air, with no real solid reason why.
Okay, so with all these flaws, what's the final verdict? What was the real legacy of this model for India? Was it a huge success, or did it send the country down the wrong path?
Well, what the sources tell us is that, yeah, it had weaknesses, no doubt, but the Mahalanobanis model was still absolutely essential. It was the thing that got the Indian economy on the right track for planning its own development. You could say it was a really, really important first step.
At the end of the day, this model is what laid the foundation for India's entire industrial base, especially in those heavy industries. The iconic steel plants in places like Bhilai and Rourkela, they were born directly from this way of thinking. And its impact, its influence on India's economic game plan was felt for many, many decades.
And all of this leaves us with a really big question for today, right? How should a developing nation balance building for the long term, that industrial growth, with taking care of its people's needs right now? It turns out the Mahalanobanis dilemma is just as relevant today as it was back then.